Here are the 10 most brutal fouls in the history of football. At number 10, we start at football's biggest stage, the World Cup final. It's the final of the 2010 FIFA World Cup, hosted in South Africa. The Netherlands are up against the current best international team in the world, Spain. It's 0-0 in the 28th minute of the game, when Dutch player Nigel de Jong decides to become a karate fighter against Spanish midfielder Xavi Alonso. The Spanish players were understandably furious with the English referee Howard Webb, and even more so when he only showed a yellow card for the foul. It's hard to believe this wasn't a red card when you see the video, but fortunately for Spain, Alonso was able to carry on and went on to lift the World Cup. Our top 3 fouls, however, had no choice but to be given red cards. Some of these players should have been put in prison. At number 9, we have a player who was fouled so badly he even sued the other player and the opposing team's coach, going down as the best-known foul in the history of the Bundesliga. In 1981, Arminia Bielefeld are against Werder Bremen. Uwold Leenen tried to dribble past Norbert Siegmann, which is when Siegmann's iron studs cut through Leenen's leg, leaving bone and flesh for all to see. I can't show you the photos, otherwise YouTube would block this video. The player incredibly recovered from the injury after 4 weeks, but Siegmann and Otto Rigo, the coach of Werder Bremen at the time, did not get off lightly. According to Leenen's accusation, the player had been encouraged to commit the foul by his teammates and coaching staff. The lawsuit ended up failing, but the incident didn't go unnoticed in the return match, with the Bremen coach even wearing a bulletproof vest on the bench because of the amount of death threats he had received. Some players deliberately try to hurt their opponents on the pitch, but sometimes the guilt of a bad foul can be too much for a player, and that's exactly what happened for our number 8. We travel to the Premier League in England, where Ryan Shawcross's Stoke City were against Arsenal. Shawcross entered a duel against Aaron Ramsey's leg. Shawcross received a red card and was suspended for 3 matches.
Strong challenge that. Quarter given.
That's a bad challenge.
Arsenal manager Arsene Wenger and the rest of the squad were furious. Shawcross cried after seeing the state he'd left Ramsey in on the floor. The 19-year-old Aaron Ramsey was just starting to make a name for himself in the football world, and many feared his career was already over. But fortunately for him, he was able to recover from the horrific injury and continues to play as of today. Now, for number 7, we move on to a foul that was so bad it gave a player a new nickname, the Butcher of Bilbao. In the 1980s, Athletic Bilbao and Barcelona had the biggest rivalry in Spain. On September 24th, 1984, Bilbao visited the Camp Nou for a run-of-the-mill league game against the Catalan Giants. There would be nothing run-of-the-mill about what happened to Maradona midway through the match. Receiving a pass with his back to the goal, the Argentina superstar was tackled by Gogacher, who dived in and clattered into the forward. Maradona would be stretchered off, his ankle broken and ligaments in tatters, and unable to return to the football pitch for a year. Barcelona called for a lifetime ban for the Butcher of Bilbao, who was eventually suspended for 18 matches instead, a punishment that was later reduced to 7 on appeal. Maradona referred to it himself as an axe blow. I felt the impact, heard the sound like a piece of wood cracking, and realized immediately what had happened. But sometimes the most brutal fouls are not committed by someone's leg, as we move on to number 6 and travel back to the Premier League. In 2006, Manchester City played against Portsmouth. After a corner kick, Portsmouth player Mendes rushed to clear the ball. This was all until Manchester City's Thatcher hit him in the face with an elbow for no reason.
There was a thunderous challenge there by Thatcher.
Mendes lost consciousness and had to be treated on the field and then taken to the hospital. The crazy thing about this foul is that it only received a yellow card. What is it with English referees not giving red cards? Later, he was suspended by the FA for 8 matches and fined 6 weeks worth of wages by his own club. But the top 5 on our list are even more brutal than the first 5. Let's move back to the World Cup, but this time it's 1982, France v Germany. It's the semi-final, and the encounter is already ruthless, with players making bad fouls throughout the game. But one foul stood out, a good opportunity for France as the space opens up for an attack, as the German goalkeeper, Schumacher, collided with French player Patrick Battiston, knocking him out with a big blow. The player lost several teeth and suffered a spinal injury, one of the worst fouls of all time. The goalkeeper had no chance of touching the ball, and it seemed like he just wanted to deliberately knock out the French player. But the craziest part about this brutal foul is the goalkeeper didn't receive any card, not even a yellow. Germany went on to win the game, but not the final of the World Cup, as they lost to Italy. Maybe some justice was given. And as we're starting to see, the worst fouls are when they're deliberate, and that's exactly what happened in another World Cup game between USA and Brazil in 1994. Normally, when you face Brazil, you expect beautiful football. The last thing you expect is dirty play. On Independence Day no less, one Brazilian misunderstood what the Constitution said about the right to bear arms. The Brazilian, Leonardo, elbowed the USA player Ramos so badly that his skull was broken and he was left jerking on the pitch. Leonardo was fined $5,000 and banned for 5 games. But for their number 3, the next tackle was so bad that it ended a player's career. Nowadays, we all know superstar Erling Haaland for scoring plenty goals for Manchester City, including a hat-trick against their rivals Manchester United. But the Haaland family has a lot of history against the red side of Manchester. In 1997, Alfie Haaland, who is Erling Haaland's dad, was playing against Manchester United for Leeds United. With Leeds 1-0 up, Manchester United captain Roy Keane was chasing a loose pass into the penalty area before he attempted to trip Alfie Haaland, which resulted in his own injury. Haaland leaned over him and shouted to stop faking an injury, but Keane wasn't faking. He tore his cruciate ligament and was out injured for a while. Almost 4 years later, the two faced each other again. Haaland was now playing for Manchester City, just like his son went on to do, and there was only one thing on Keane's mind: injuring Haaland. He received a red card and a 3-match suspension, plus a fine of £5,000. 1.5 years later, he wrote in his autobiography that it was deliberate and he wanted to hurt Haaland in that foul, which led to him getting another 5-match suspension and a fine this time of £150,000. And just like Roy Keane, not every player learns their lesson. This is Luis Suarez for number 2, with the Uruguayan striker biting another football player on not only one occasion, not even twice, but 3 different times. Yes, that's right, he bit other players. The first time for Ajax against PSV, where he took a nibble at Otman Bakal's neck. The second time for Liverpool against Branislav Ivanovic. And the third time against Italy, taking a bite of Chiellini's shoulder. The player has suffered numerous amount of fines and bans for the action he's made with his big teeth. And the vampire wannabe striker seems to have never learned his lesson.
Suarez the cannibal, now they're calling him.
But for our number 1, not only is it the most brutal foul in our list, it's the most shocking moment in World Cup history. It's one of the world's greatest ever players, playing his last ever professional game in the biggest fixture of the planet. Zinedine Zidane was representing France in a World Cup final in 2006 against Germany. After countless great performances from Zidane, scoring goals, creating assists, and even winning the tournament's Best Player award, it was all down to the final where his legacy would forever be tainted. He started the game in classic Zidane fashion by scoring the most audacious Panenka penalty to put France 1-0 up. 5 minutes remaining of extra time, both goal scorers are exchanging words, Zidane of France and Materazzi of Italy, and then it happens. Zidane paid the price, and so did his teammates, who lost on penalties, leaving Materazzi's Italy World Cup champions. Men's football, however, isn't the only sport that's entertaining. Here's a video of the craziest moments in women's football.